Hey everyone, and on today's episode of PincheAls Garage, we are doing coilovers. SoloWerks to be exact, and we're doing it for this 2002 BMW right here. And so we're going to get to work because this is PincheAls Garage. These coilovers on, we're going to this is actually very simple on the front. I've already done the front, so I can actually repeat the process in the rear, but you are going to need the factory strut caps to do this job. So, but you guys can see these are on really nice, and SoloWerks nicely gives you brand new end links, so this job can be done correctly and very nicely. So we're going to get to work. We're going to do the other side, and then from there we're going to do the rears. So first things first, on your DIY, you're going to be removing the top hat, but not removing it completely. Just these are 13mm bolts. You're going to break them loose, and you're just going to make them go all the way down, pretty much almost to the end, but don't remove them completely. And then work your way down here. Make sure your key's in the ignition so you can actually turn the wheel, steering wheel. So there's an 18. Oh, let me bring this back over. There we go. So you got that bolt right there to remove, and then you got the end links, top and bottom, which are 15s. Get these off, and then we'll show you what to do next. So now that we got the strut out, we just unbolted everything and pretty much took out the 3 bolts on top, the 18 on the bottom, the 15 for the end link, and that's pretty much the whole suspension for the front. Now you're going to grab your replacement coil, and with that you're going to remove the top nut, which is a 22. Make sure you have a slim socket 22 though, very important during this process. You're going to insert your coil pretty much in here. Now what's very important when you're doing this, you got to make sure this is on this side and the other one should be the opposite, because they're actually specific to each side. So make sure you remember that. That's very important, this notch, because it's for your strut tower. Now you're going to push the coilover all the way down until it bottoms out. Once you do that, now the coil is actually low enough so you can put your new strut bushing, which you're going to use the washer first, and then put the bushing on top like that. Now what you're going to need next is the bolt here for the bottom. Now start it by hand, leave it alone for right now, and then you need to go get a jack, because you're going to need to jack this guy up so you can bolt it into the top. Now with the jack underneath the control arm, you're going to be going up slowly and lining it up with the holes on top. You'll see here, everything lines up. It even's got a little nipple here to line up the top. Get your new nuts, and they're locking nuts. Just don't throw them and thread them down. through this one all the way over here. Now, since you're already doing that, now you're going to put some tension on the actual shock here. So what's going to happen, put some pressure on it and you're going to see the strut go up. Because that's what we need. We need this to go all the way up so we can put the new nut on there, which is the 22 that we're talking about, this guy. Started by hand. Now what's difficult about this one is that you really can't find a normal socket that fits in there, so you can tighten it down with an Allen wrench. So the bad thing is you're going to torque these down with an impact gun, unfortunately, because I don't have a way of not torquing them down with an impact gun, unfortunately. Proper way to do it is that you're supposed to get a socket that you can hold with a wrench and then use an Allen to pretty much reverse like torque, and then hold that and while you torque it down with using the socket so it goes down, but we don't have that. So use your impact, tighten it all the way down, call it done, and then we're going to work our way on the bottom. So the next thing we're going to be doing is getting these guys, the end link taken off. So you need a vice grip so you can have the reverse hold on this while you're trying to break it loose with the 14. Oopsies. So that's removed, and this is how we got it on there, pretty much so you can hold it here and then you break it loose. These are the new end links, and since these are brand new, we don't have to hold them down with any wrenches. Just install them like normal. Now, you're going to need a jack. Oh, this worked out actually for me. Now these are 17s, I believe. Yeah. There's that one, and then tighten the top one, and then we tighten the 18 down below, and then everything, and tighten the 13 on top, and then you're done. You got the front coilover suspension pretty much done. Pretty easy. Now we're going to work on the back. Alright, so now we're working on the rear. Now I have the rear already unbolted. It's just two 13mm bolts. Now I'll show you where they're located. You go to the back of the car, and right here, if you pull your body panel, this one already had the body panel removed since they already did coilovers before. So usually they have these little grommets that you have to pull out. Pull those grommets out, and then there they are. Then right here you'll see there's the two bolt holes. There's two 13mm. You're going to need to use a deep socket. Do not use a shallow because you won't reach it. Unbolt those. Now, what I did to be safe, because what's going to happen is you're going to have a lot of tension on here. So what you want to do is over here, if you look down, we have this little jack stand. And what I did is, let me move you guys back. I jacked up the car, put the jack set underneath it, right on the control arm. Watch out for the wires. There are wires right here located here. You want to damage those. And when you're done, don't drop the car. Leave the jack stand. Number one, this is actually a safe spot to jack up your car and put your jack stand there, so you guys can lift and lower the car and work underneath it. So if jack fails, don't worry about it. So what you do, number one, I'm going to show you guys really quick. So, and this is a bad example earlier, but I'll show it to you guys first. You can see the control arm raising the actual shock for us. Well, it was raised, but the shocks are bad, so and you'll see here with the control arm and the jack stand underneath it, it's allowing us to push up on the shock itself, the shock assembly, and because of that we're able to actually line up the holes and line up the bracket into the actual shock itself. So that's a win-win right there. Now we're going to go back and do that to lower the car again. I mean, raise the car back up. Oh man, I'm not thinking straight today. Because the issue now is the spring. Since there's an aftermarket spring in here, there's a perch that there's a factory perch that's no longer here. So what we're going to end up doing is reusing the perches on this one with the SoloWerks Coilovers. If this car was never modified or never anything, you should have a rubber perch underneath here that would allow you to reuse the actual SoloWerks Coilover. But since there was already modifications done to this car, we're SOL on that, so we're going to do a slightly different setup. Not very much, just changing one thing around. Solves the problem. Just makes it a little bit harder though for other people who don't have the same setup. So if you have a factory thing, a factory coilover, the perch is actually installed upside down. If you use the SoloWerks Coilovers, the black perch, I'll show you guys before I start taking stuff out. This is the SoloWerks Coilover perch. Now this is supposed to be mounted like that, and then the factory spring perch down here is where the spring actually sits on, and it solves the problem. But this car doesn't have that, so we have to use the coilover setup that's already on here, their perch, and put the spring on there. So it makes it a little bit harder, but it's very, very doable. I did the other side already yesterday. Wasn't a big deal. So the next thing is we have to remove the actual shock here. So we're going to get to that in just a moment. Now you're going to need a breaker bar and an 18mm socket to break loose this guy down here. Once you do that, take off the socket here. So here's your bolt. These are no longer being used, so now we're going to get the new ones in here. So what do you see here down below? I had to order new perches because for the rear shock perch or shock mount, the aftermarket coils had their own mount, and since they're a larger body thread, you can't reuse them for these shocks. The SoloWerks have a smaller thread, so I had to get these KYBs. This is the part number SM5257 from KYB. These are the strut mounts for the rear of your BMW. Now there's two different styles. You need to make sure the one that you're getting for this car offers the perch that looks like this, the mount that looks like this, because there's another style that's actually taller, much taller, and when you install the actual shock itself, the threads don't go all the way through, so you're kind of SOL on that setup. So I had to use these, and these work beautifully. Now it's time to install the actual mount here. So first things first, we're going to have to do, put the nut on, find something that can hold the body itself. And just ratchet this bad boy down all the way to the bottom. Almost there. Alright, nice and snug. Take that vice grip off. Now there's a washer. The washer's for the inner side, not the outer. Obviously there's no difference on any side of these shocks, but what I mean is when you actually put the bolt through, the bolt goes through the front. Put the washer on the inside, because that's what's going to actually give you a stronger grip, because you want the nut to hit here completely. Okay? Now that we're going to install the shock, remember, the nut goes on in, the bolt goes on one side, washer on the other. Now since I'm already closer to the actual body here, the shock actually goes all the way to the top on this side. Kind of weird. Now remember, always hand thread any bolt. Never use an impact or a ratchet to start a bolt, because it's just a bad idea. Now give it a good tightening. Got that all done here. Now before you even bolt the top, we actually gotta get that spring out now, and I'll show you how to do that. Let me see you guys a good spot here. Alright, so that's where we're at. So what's going to happen is you're going to step on it. But before I do that, let's get the car back off the ground. Get this out of the way. So now that the tension's dropped from the decent amount of tension has been removed off the spring, so I can spin it by hand. We're going to step right here on the caliper, push down, get your hand in there, and get the spring out just like that. We're going to reverse the process to get the new springs in here. Here are the replacement springs from SoloWerks. So there's a small top and then there's a flat bottom. Flat bottom goes down, round top goes up. So close. Come on. Oh, come on. There we go. Now. Oh, dang it. Rubber perch came out. I was wondering why it's so simple to get in there. There you go. Now, get your jack stand back underneath the car. Get in a good spot. Pay close attention. Ooh. Come on. Now, dropping the spring, or dropping the shock. Oh, geez, I can't think right now, guys. Sorry. Dropping the car will raise the control arm, get that spring seated nicely. You're gonna, at the same time, you're gonna line up your shock to the mounting holes and finish it off with bolting it back on using the 13 provided bolts, and you're done with the rear. Make sure you look up your torque specs for the rear and the front. I couldn't find some good torque specs for this car, so I'm hoping that you guys can actually provide that in the feedback. Put that in the comments down below. Give me some good torque specs, and I'll definitely copy them and paste them in the description so you guys can get that done. So now we're going to do some after, because I already had pictures of it before, and we're going to do some after shots now and see how it looks. Be right back. So you guys can see here that the car is now officially done. That's sitting pretty good. Now, I keep my cars, when I put new coils on them, a little higher than normal. And the reason for this is because you want the springs to settle. That way you don't have like a false sense of height or a false sense of how low the car sits. Sometimes the car will settle down for another like 2 or 3 millimeters, even up to 5 millimeters more. And then your car that wasn't rubbing is now rubbing. So that is really a good rule of thumb to do whenever you lower a car, especially on coilovers, because you'd never know how low the car will settle. So keep the height pretty high, not super high, but pretty high, and then let it settle over time. Give it about a week. Usually 4 to 7 days is what I recommend. And then slam that baby. Slam it to where it makes sense, or the car is actually going to get new wheels soon. They're just waiting for on a set of tires, but right now it rides so much better than it was before. The car on those cheap coilovers was blown. They were all blown. Pretty much all the shocks were blown. That thing was just riding like crud. So turned out really, really good. I took a spin in it and it rides so nice. It rides like a stock car, a lowered stock car, which is not bad. So thanks for watching this episode of PincheAls Garage using SoloWerks Coilovers, and a big shout out to SoloWerks for providing some awesome products and making your products so much better than a lot of those cheap eBay stuff. Just whole other world of just quality when you buy SoloWerks, and I recommend them a lot. Thanks again, and we'll see you guys again soon. And as always, we're going to break, fix, and repeat.